daughter, 13, reading very explicit romance novels. I joke that this is what made me a reader. When I was 13 my grandma knew I liked books and was like, oh, if you like books I have a whole box of books in the garage. Sent me home with a box full of smutty novels. My parents restricted what music I could listen to, no curse words, what I could watch on TV. I wasn't allowed to watch South Park or The Simpsons. But when they saw me reading books they left it alone, so it was the only place I had complete access to uncensored material. I could read whatever I wanted. I read that entire box of smutty novels. A bunch of super dark teenage fiction about suicide, anorexia, abuse, teen pregnancy. I liked grown-up topics to help make sense of the world. I scored very high on the reading portion of the Saturday. I'm 32 and a lifelong reader. My 5-year-old and I have read over 1100 children's books this year. I finish 5 to 10 adult books a month. I plan to take a somewhat similar media approach with her as she gets older. I don't want her watching some super graphic, dark stuff. But you can read whatever you want. When you give freedom in reading you raise readers. /view 200D. That is definitely an age for discovery and be happy it is books instead of all the things she could find on the internet. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. She's a teenager. This is definitely normal. Just keep the lines of communication open, because the worst thing you could do is shame her. Totally agree with no shaming. I also read very sexually explicit romance novels at that age. Hormones are aging, and in my house we did not have the opportunity to openly discuss what to do with those feelings. I wrote some pretty explicit stories as well, because I enjoyed writing. My mother found them, and she shamed me horrendously. It still has an effect on me to this day. What does mom say when you talk about it? I was a voracious reader and reading adult books by 11. This isn't surprising to me. I'm 49 and I still remember discovering a Ken Follett book, Lay Down with Lions, I think, at the school library with a 3-page intense sex scene. Every 13-year-old boy in school checked that book out. Though I don't think it was quite as explicit as this, but then again I'm not sure what difference explicitness makes. Mom is a bit more blasé about it, so maybe I should just defer to her and make sure she has a convo with daughter about the books. Daughter is a very private young woman, so I'm not sure if she will engage. Oh, The Pillars of the Earth was very popular in my high school. Honestly, I'm kind of glad your daughter is exploring her sexuality in this way. It's not internet porn, which can really mess with young and old people's heads. The characters in the book, I assume, are all consenting to whatever it is they are doing. Moreover, I found, growing up and now, that erotica was central to the idea that sex should also feel good for women. Sex ed in my school was very much, and then the man has an orgasm the end, and my mother certainly never said also, this should be fun for you, too, when she talked about sex. So it was books that taught me that sex should be pleasurable all around. When I was 13 I was going into AOL chat rooms and sexting Randis. This seems better and also better than modern porn. LMAO, oh god, I totally blocked that memory. Me too. Yikes. I'm finding a lot of comfort knowing I wasn't alone. When I was that age I was super into Anne Rice, and her books do definitely have sex scenes and overall tones of eroticism. I was also super into Anne Rice fanfiction. This was before Anne threw a fit about fanfiction, so there were forums and websites full of that stuff. A ton of it was /fanfic. So I'm reading very graphic depictions of male/male sex. There's also BDSM element, and portrayals of kind of underage sex. Character had a body of a 15-year-old, but was 500 years old. One day my dad comes home and wants the computer. I'm in the middle of rereading one of the most graphic stories. I try and close the window, and he tells me to stop because he doesn't want to wait for the browser to load again. And that's how he learned about what I was reading. He never said a word to me. I turned out fine. Also, that was about the age where I started looking through my dad's old Playboys and sneaking out to the living room to watch the 11 p.m. softcore Cinemax movie. Yes, this. If Op doesn't let her read explicit novels, she can and most likely will just read that kind of stuff online for free like fanfiction. And trust me, A lot of fanfic is 100x more explicit and some 100x more fucked up than anything that would ever allowed to be published in a novel. Even those trashy erotic novels that people poke fun at. Source: a girl in her 30s who found erotic fanfiction when she was 8. I'm 39 and I read L. Kennedy. The books that I've read portray very healthy, boundary-centric relationships. Yes, they're steamy, but it's all consensual. Oh. Thanks first person commenting who has read those books. Glad to hear that. I actually find that a fair few romances in that rom-com genre are that way. I read anywhere from 10 to 20 spicy romance novels a month. I used to too until depression got in the way. L. Kennedy writes relationships really well. I also enjoy Amy Dawes and JTG Sina. They both write their female characters as strong and independent. Honestly, romance novels are so much better than porn. Most romance books are written for a female audience, so the men are often more respectful, not always depending on specific genre of course, than general media and porn, which she will likely be exposed to at some point if not already. No point in trying to hold back the tide of puberty. Don't worry like that. Girls discover their interest in sex and their own sexuality between the ages of 10 and 14, and I was already watching porn when I was 12 with my friends just for fun. By the way, I'm 32F now, and I've become professionally successful and stayed a virgin until I was 18. Everything is finny. So discovering interest in sex during puberty didn't condemn you to a life of misery. I guess my feeling is far better to be reading women-written romance than watching crappy porn, / just trying to figure out what our policy should be, and these perspectives are very helpful. Thank you. I read V.C. Andrews' books when I was even younger than that and I mostly turned out fine. Close bracket. And they were all disturbing and full of incest. I mean, thank God she isn't watching porn about dumb 18-year slag being abused anally. That would really screw her up mentally. Ugh. For now, as far as I know. I was a huge bookworm. I was around that age when I started reading them. It is a safe space for someone to privately explore their sexuality. In a way, it could benefit her. I personally had better self-awareness and knew what I wanted both emotionally and physically. It actually turned me off of boys my age because I thought they were young and assumed they had no idea what they would be doing / were horny and only wanted one thing from me. So I waited to date until senior year and just took care of myself when the urge hit. This helped me understand my desires more and how to openly communicate my needs with a partner in the future. The emotional aspect books have, as opposed to overacted videos, also really drew me in and matched my values of having a deeper connection with someone. Agree. Thanks Reddit women over 30, you are all awesome and so helpful. I think you and her mom, not just her mom, but you as well, should talk to her and make sure she knows she can ask you anything. I also think she needs to hear from both of you that how sex is depicted in media is not realistic, whether it's in a book or in a movie or in porn, and explain how it can be problematic, especially for women. Actively counteract some of the negative messages she could be hearing and learning about her own self-worth by reading this stuff. I think it's completely normal for a teen to be interested in sex. Cutting off her access means 1, she will likely be finding it elsewhere, and my layperson's opinion is, she's better reading romance novels than watching graphic porn online or something. And 2, it will give her the impression, rightly or wrongly, that she is doing something bad and wrong and shameful, which would be even more problematic and damaging to her than what she's reading in the first place. Probably wouldn't hurt to read a few of the books she's been reading and get a better idea of what the content includes, too, just to make sure it's not completely nuts or bonkers. Thanks, this all seems like a healthy approach. Just don't go into her room without knocking LMAO. I read the same at that age and a bit younger, and honestly, a lot of it went over my head. Not sure the same can be said nowadays with social media and how much information kids have. Like another poster mentioned, I didn't do the deed until college, so reading the material didn't springboard activities in real life. If anything, it made me see high school boys as unromantic hornballs lol. Sexy romances, real life joy, kill, love it. I'll check out the author. I started reading erotic fiction at about 11 and also was on chat rooms at 12. I'm 35 now, own my own business and am happy, unmarried and child free, but have a long-term partner. It didn't mess me up personally, however it made me realize that I wasn't interested in society defined normal relationships. I'm not sure if there have been discussions about ethical non-monogamy, but I wish I had learnt about this when I was younger. She should also be aware that a lot of fiction gets a lot of things wrong about sex. I expected to have mind-blowing orgasmic sex, and with I'm still extremely disappointed. I'd recommend the book Come As You Are to have good discussions about sex. She has a few such books, but wife will have another convo with her about respect etc. IDK. I read them, I was okay. Most people focus on the explicit scenes and that's understandable. Of course there are those which come with very mature themes that would introduce nuances, and as a parent maybe you want to have your kid come to you should they have any questions. Or you want to have the talk on realistic expectations. When I was young, I always felt that books are a way for me to experience those things without feeling like I have to have the lived experience. I'm not missing out, and I'm not being unsafe. It's a way for me to have my cake and eat it too. Might I also suggest encouraging her to read other books as well? I tend to do a rotation of sci-fi, classics, fantasy. Now but I do remember a time when I consumed romance and romance alone. At the end of the day readers gravitate towards their interest. Agreed, getting her to read other stuff when she can access this isn't easy though. Part of the problem, if there is one. I started reading Outlander when I was 13. Mum and I were visiting my 30-something still, and she recommended it to me saying it may not be age appropriate. I grabbed that book faster than a lightning bolt. My mum was just happy that I wanted to read. Jamie, the male protagonist, was my first book crush because he was kind, respectful and honorable. They just happened to have a lot of sex. There was also our pen in the books, but that part taught me how important consent is. I'm now 34, studied literature and enjoy all sorts of genres. I turned out fine. If you want her to read other stuff too, and she isn't reading from Kindle Unlimited, you could set a reasonable budget for each month, $50 or whatever, and encourage her to get books from the local library whenever she used up her budget. Don't make it about reading smut, but about the money. If she is using her own to purchase them, encourage a library card anyway. Eventually, she'll branch out regardless of how much smut she's currently reading. Just don't shame her for her taste. That will only cause your relationship to suffer. I did this at the same age and I'm fine. Let her be. I was going through massive piles of explicit fanfiction by the age of 15. And the only thing keeping me back from doing it earlier was the fact that English isn't my first language. It did wonders for my fluency. This is normal behavior. I wouldn't do anything about it unless it had effects on her schoolwork or something. Thanks, sensible approach. I think you are right to worry more about the values and ideas she's picking up from the books, Marisa, than the sexual content. Romance novels are like porn. They depict fantasy scenarios that are entertaining to consume, but would not be healthy at all in real life. Things like stalking, not taking no for an answer, seemingly non-consensual or violent interactions, an emphasis on virginity, magically changing unsuitable men from assholes into good partners through the power of love. Romance novels have a lot of ickiness and it's worth a discussion with her. Yes, I guess the best thing is to just talk about some of the reasons I am concerned. Mainly some bad messages and maybe unhealthy amount of time consuming these books. That sounds like the right approach. I wouldn't panic. Rest assured, the strongest messages she will absorb about love, sex, and gender roles will come from the relationship you and her mother model, not these books. At that age I was reading, and unfortunately writing, explicit gay fiction. I turned out okay. I would read one of the novels yourself though. Some straight romance novels are heavy on sexism and coerced consent. Yeah, that's actually a big part of what concerns me, the maybe shitty messages. Do everything you can to keep her away from internet porn, but allow the novels. At least it's not Sword of Truth or GOT. Romance novels would not concern me at all. When I was your daughter's age, I was scanning my library shelves for any books with steamy romance scenes and more. Honestly, I think reading it is better than watching porn. If your wife is okay with it, let it go. Teenagers explore their sexuality. It's part of figuring out their bodies and what they like or want. It's hard to think of your kid like that, but it's pretty normal. Have safe sex talks, and otherwise let her figure this out. You cannot really ask her to stop reading it. It will only make her to read it secretly, and she is a teenager. That's the age. What you can do though is introduce books that matches her age and discuss about the same when you catch up together. This way, she will not be addicted to reading only romance novel and will be exposed to more human emotions, experiences and knowledge. Sounds as if you've gotten some sound advice, but I'll just add my don't worry. Let her read it to the chorus. Adolescent girls are super interested in sex and also romance. She may not just be obsessing over the sex. She probably is invested in the actual plots of these novels. If she's had talks about sex/etc. with her mom, I would leave her to her devices and let her explore this on her own. I'm 52. Read everything I could get my hands on. My parents didn't have any porn, but they were big readers and there were always novels around the house, many containing explicit sex scenes. My parents did not comment or censor. Lost my virginity at 18. Was responsible about birth control. Didn't get pregnant until in a committed relationship. Married 20 years now. Have zero to negative hang-ups about sex in general. I read romance at 12. The only thing I would have benefited from is the talk about how the fantasy is not always the reality. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry too much. Just have the reality of safe practices and consent as part of the discussions. Oh, I found one of my mother's books, Delta of Venus by unrealistic. When I was 10, I was already physically developed and having periods since 2 years. So more or less I had to knew the very basic facts about sex, and in general never had taboo topics with both my parents. Being an avid reader, I read everything I happened to get my hands on. My mom found the book under my bed a few days later and hid it. In fact, it was too late as I had already finished it. Honestly, I couldn't understand her reaction. It seemed such a dichotomy to encourage me to free thinking while censoring it. And it's been the only book I've got such a contrasted access to. Unrealistic is such a good writer that even the spicier details are beautifully presented, and moreover, its content wasn't even that scandalous to me to justify her disagreement. In actual fact, I found it immensely interesting because sex was declined into many different shades, from romantic love to even incest I wasn't aware of, while stimulating the desire to actually know about my own private parts. I can declare that's been my personal beginner's guide to discovering my own sex language. Despite throughout my teen years the book got found again and hidden again various times, even well past I came of age, made me aware of myself and maybe much less sexually inhibited than many other people. Although I kept my virginity until 23 and never had a promiscuous sex life. If she was reading unrealistic and I wouldn't bat an eyelash. I was hiding out in the smut aisles at Borders when I was about that age. Depending on what exactly she's reading, it's not that big of a deal.